It's time for Agriculture, presented by TURKANA Farms in Germantown, New York, a small-scale producer of heritage breed livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Mark Scherzer.
Well, we had our big business meeting on Sunday, and it's time to report on how we're going to creatively make the farm profitable. After all, farming is, in Troy and Victoria's life plan, a career, a livelihood. And we agreed that in today's agricultural economy, a small farm can only make it by seeking every revenue stream it can possibly find. So we sat down with the stated purpose of thinking outside the box, taking advantage of the value of existing farm products in new ways, or creating entirely different products or services, someplace where we could lead the way. And as I promised last week, here are the minutes of our deliberations. I called the meeting to order. Okay, guys, what are your suggestions? Right off the bat, Troy, ever the jokester, replied,
Well, I was thinking, we have this incredible ridge of shale out in the pasture. What about something like artisanal fracking?
Victoria shot it down immediately.
Please, Troy, let's take this seriously. We want a farm that thrives, a successful farm, not a successful poison sinkhole. Fracking is environmentally irresponsible, even if you call it artisanal. How about something a little less impactful? For example, maybe selling advertising space on the side of the barn.
It was my turn to object. Hey, we're supposed to stand for not just small farming, but aesthetically pleasing farming as well. That doesn't seem to jibe with our image. It would probably hurt sales of our existing farm products if people associated us with the huge neon Coca-Cola sign on the side of the barn. I continued, but I agree that we need to look at monetizing activities we already do and products we already have, not creating new burdens on us, just new revenue sources. And as I was searching on the internet for ideas, one that came to me was putting a paywall on our farm bulletin, charge people for reading it. And while we're at it, maybe we should move over to commercial radio. I mean, I like Marshall and Jill and all, and Robin Hood Radio is a great little station, but don't you think we might get paid something if we got nationally syndicated on commercial country radio? Well, this idea really appealed to both Troy and Victoria. Why not get paid for something you already do? We took a vote and adopted it unanimously. If you find we've moved a couple of stations down the dial in the coming weeks, that'll be the reason. We figure if you really like it, you'll pay. At this, Victoria said,
Along those lines, I was reading in the New York Times science section that people would be much healthier and have far fewer food allergies if their immune systems worked properly. And the reason that more people have these allergies nowadays is that they live in environments that are too sterile. Exposure to bacteria and pathogens, especially for young children, in the long term makes them healthier. As the article said, it may be good for you to pick your nose and eat it.
So, I said,
think about it. We have a perfect environment here to expose people to pathogens and immune-stimulating substances. Ragweed pollen in the gardens, chick poop in the chicken coop, sheep poop in the barn. I've always hoped to do educational programs here for kids. Maybe what we can educate, unlike other farms, is children's immune systems. I've talked to a couple of immunologists at Duke and Harvard. They told me about the clinical trials that several major medical centers are engaged in for something called progressive immune conditioning. They convinced me that we could set up a graduated exposure program for kids, especially kids who seem to be developing bad allergies young. We're walking around doing chores anyway. We can just have a group of kids tagging along, tasting the weed tassels, rubbing their hands in the poop. Week by week, as we increase the range and intensity of exposures, their immune systems will strengthen. And they may even end up helping out a little with chores. At $10 per kid per week, this could be a great revenue stream.
We debated the wisdom of having young kids running around and all the potential hazards they could encounter. But on balance, we decided that at $10 a kid a week, we could afford to take the risk. So this proposal was again unanimously added to the list. And you, Troy, I asked, do you have any suggestions that are not just a joke?
Actually, I do.
Troy said.
I was reading last week in the Cornell Cooperative Extension newsletter that the best way to dispose of diseased animals that die is to bury them in the compost pile. There's a lot of literature on this. The heat of the decomposing organic matter essentially incinerates anything placed in there, as is evident from the wisps of steam constantly rising out of the pile. Any pathogens in the diseased animals get cooked, and the matter is broken down into rich soil. And then it hit me. We are already composting, and we have a massive compost pile on top of the hill behind the barn. Why not take advantage of that and offer a crucial service to the public? I'm sure plenty of people want to take something solid and turn it into soil with a little microbe magic. They might not even care about making soil. Maybe they just want something hidden under a giant pile of manure. I call it no questions asked composting. I have to admit, I already tried to pilot this idea by running a little ad on Craigslist Hudson Valley, and we've had some interesting inquiries. One guy from Staten Island called and asked if a Cadillac limousine could get up to the compost pile. He said his brothers had something in the trunk they'd like to use this service for. They would pay us a premium if they could deliver and dig it in themselves sometime after 1 a.m. They were really willing to pay a nice hefty sum, and they said they'd deliver payment in cash.
You really think everyone will pay that well, I asked? Troy replied,
Nah. In fact, I had another call a little bit later from a guy in Washington who asked if we had any government rates. He said he had some 300-page report he needed taken care of. I told him I didn't care what it was and that we don't offer discounts to governments. He sounded like a real cheapskate, and in fact, I thought he might stiff us. Doesn't matter though. The first guy said the family could supply us with a pretty steady stream of business.
Our debate was short. With no questions asked composting, we figured we could make out like bandits. And again, this novel proposal to generate farm revenue was adopted unanimously. So, dear listeners, get ready for some changes in our farming model. And if you want to take advantage of no questions asked composting, or progressive immune conditioning, or even just want to listen to our podcast from our commercial country radio program, simply go to our Turkana Farms website and press the tab labeled April Fools.
AgriCulture is underwritten by Turkana Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.